So I'm going to start the meeting. It is March 2nd and it's 6:30 p.m. In accordance with Governor Baker's executive order permitting virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic, the 2229 Main Street Oversight Committee is conducting this meeting today, March 2nd, 2020, on the Zoom platform and in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1st, 2020. I'm supposed to ask you all to mute your microphones, and but honestly, I don't actually care. It's fine with me if you want to leave them open for this. This is a pretty laid back group, and we're going to be asking questions of people in the audience anyway during the meeting. So this meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. All committee votes will be taken via roll call. We will start with an attendance roll call. I will announce your name. Please reply. For members of the public, please unmute yourself when I've opened the meeting to public comment. I'm reading off of something that doesn't really apply, but we will get to public comments as well. So I'm Pam Rockwell and I'm here. Len Rapoli.
Yep, I'm here, Pam.
Okay. Nick Pappas.
Here.
Fred Seward.
Here.
Okay, and Deborah Farnsworth is not coming tonight. So that's our committee members. The first item on the agenda is to look over the meetings from the minutes from January 5th, January 6th, 5th. I should take my glasses off. January 5th. I just resent them to Nick and Fred if you didn't have them from when Len sent them out the day after the meeting. Have you guys have copies to look at?
I had forgotten about the old one. I just got the one you resent, so I haven't read it yet.
Okay. So you want to take a moment to, Fred, do you have the one I sent?
Not sure.
Okay. I sent to your Gmail.
All right, let me look.
Okay. So take a look through and we'll see. Nick, did you have any changes?
I'm still looking at it. Just give me a minute.
Okay.
It's okay with me.
And Len, you're taking minutes.
I am,
Okay,
Pam, yep.
thanks.
Yeah, I think the minutes are all right.
Does that mean you're making a motion to accept them?
I move we accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep,
Pam, yes. Len?
yep.
Fred?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Okay. The minutes are accepted. Okay, so the next subject on the agenda is the PFAS and 1,4-dioxane, the water quality monitoring information that's coming out. The information that we have is kind of old. It's from a year ago. The PFAS data is fairly new, but still not the most recent. And you may have noticed that I sent out with the meeting announcement a notes from Bruce Thompson at the Maximus about how the remedial design is going right now. And one of the things they mentioned is that they hadn't gotten the wells in to the additional dioxane sampling that they were going to be doing yet. And they were expecting to be putting them in this spring. And so that's a delay in getting that kind of data, and then he wanted to have a meeting in March to update community groups. So who's interested in our group in going to such a meeting?
It depends, with me, it depends on the date and time, but,
Mhm.
yeah, I'll have to see what time it's offered.
Okay. Fred, are you in town for
What
March?
is the date?
There's no date set yet.
Oh, I'll be here first part of March anyway.
Uh,
This is the,
What used to be called the technical group meeting.
okay. And the subject is the same as the summary that you sent with the meeting agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in some of that stuff.
Um,
Pam, is it going to be a Zoom meeting, or will we actually go to the trailer?
he's done them before on Microsoft Teams.
I have an email from Bruce that's relevant to this if I would.
Yeah.
like to speak.
Sure,
I-
Kim,
Yeah. I'm
is there a
from
date?
Texas. I live in Acton, and I got the same note from Bruce, and I wrote to him and said, when's it going to be? And he hasn't set the date yet, but it's likely to be Wednesday, the March 23rd or March 31st from 10 a.m. to noon. And it's by Microsoft Teams, which is like Zoom, but slightly different. So that's not firmly set, but those are the dates that are on the table at the moment.
It sounds like it's not going to be while Fred is in town at all.
Okay, if
Can
it's
you still do it?
a Zoom meeting, well, I can make it anytime.
Okay, so, okay. So Nick, are you interested in going to those kinds of meetings?
Yes, just depends on when it is. But
Okay.
yeah,
We have a limit on the committee can only send 3 members to an
Oh.
update without it being
put
considered.
me
a-
at the bottom then. Don't
Hmm?
put me at the top.
Okay. So what data is it that we are looking at right now? And I'm going to say that the person who was looking at this data the most was Deborah Farnsworth, and she let me know at the last minute that she wasn't available for this meeting today. So that's sort of my concern. So I'll have to say, Kim, I would love your input on this as it goes. Because you've looked at this data more carefully, and Len, you've looked at this data too. So I'm going to try to share my screen here and see which thing.
Are we talking about the PFAS data?
Yeah, we're talking about the PFAS data. I know this looks funny, but so can you see? We have, oops, I just lost that. Okay. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Are you still seeing my screen?
Yeah,
We're
no,
seeing
not-
you.
it was there for a moment.
You had it, Pam, at the,
Okay. So this is
it's not
the
there.
data that was shared around. Can you see it now?
No,
No,
Okay.
You had it originally up.
Share screen. Okay, can you see it now?
Wait a minute, no.
yep,
Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
There it is.
So this is actually the map that was sent out by Crew, copied from the Green Acton information, which shows the NMI PFAS data. And so this was shared with a bunch of you already.
yeah, I'll have,
And this is actually annotated here. So I will have to say that Deborah looked at this and said, well, it looks like it's under control. And I'd be curious to hear what other people are saying about this. Len and Kim, what do you think this says?
I mean, I'm not I'm not doing a great job of keeping up on any of this stuff, but I read on the comments of the Maximus to our comments,
Mhm.
which is on the record there, which he sent out to us. And it said about this that they have determined that the PFAS levels from near the well that were so high, they did
Right.
a study with a different well, and they seem to have shown that at least on this first time they did it, it appears that it may well, in fact, be, as they speculated, associated with the construction of the materials in that ancient well that's there. And then they
Okay.
put in a final sentence which says something to the effect, but everywhere else on the site, it's below levels of concern. Now, they didn't put the numbers in there. I did not go back to reread the final report that's been updated, but I suspect that is the way he would answer the question about the PFAS. And then they did say that they were also going to redo the test next to the old well, next to the new well, in the spring as a recheck, see if that. So they are addressing it, and they seem to think that. I guess they do not think that those levels are coming from NMI. That was the impression I got.
I'm looking at I got the concentrations here in a hard copy in front of me. I'm looking at the distribution of PFAS across NMI, and I see it's definitely highest in the holding basin, and it decreases as you go down gradient.
NMI or WR Grace?
Sorry, no, I'm looking at the NMI data.
Okay.
And on the south side of the river, it's the last well I see here, it's below the 20 PPT standard. And the same on the north side of the river. There's one well on the north side of the river that has a concentration of 7 nanograms per liter, which is below the standard. And then you move over, this is really kind of what gets me, is you move over to Assabet 1, and all of a sudden, the concentration spikes to 83 nanograms per liter. So, I mean, that to me is a real outlier. Where in the world is that coming from? I don't think that's coming from NMI.
So I would like to flip pictures at this point, if I can do it. So I might lose the screen stuff again.
Could I just make a couple comments before you leave? the show?
Sure.
Or, I think the Acton Water District would say that they don't, they don't fully understand where the PFAS at Aspet 1 is from, and I think they don't feel confident that they know the relative concentration of what might be coming from NMI and what might be coming from WR Grace. But I don't want to put words in their mouth. But I can also say that the most recent data that was released from the February 18th PFAS data from the South Acton water treatment plant is down at 19.23. And for people who don't carry these MCLs around in their heads, the maximum contaminant level for PFAS, which was set in October, is 20 for a combination of 6 different PFASs. So that's, and I'm pretty sure that that's what was written, those handwritten black numbers, I think are for the MCL6 data.
Okay, so are you still seeing the NMI data up right now, or are you seeing the WR Grace data up?
WR Grace now. So,
Okay.
but I just also wanted to point out on the NMI map that there was that one really alarming spot with 212, which there it is right there, move to the right, there, 214. So that was really shocking. I haven't seen any numbers like that anyplace else. So I don't know what to make of that.
Well, that's the one near the GZW 7-2 or whatever it is. That's the well that they think coming from, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah, as I'm looking at this. It was GZ7-2.
Right.
Yeah.
They think that well is the source of the PFAS as opposed to the contamination at the site is part of the PFAS.
Yes. And their feeling was that all the others on the site were lower than the regulatory level, and that NMI is not contributing to the PFAS over on the active side. Again, I may not be interpreting exactly right what I read, but that was the impression that I got in fact.
So I would like to mention some history as to the water models going on right now. Originally, and as late as when the record of decision was written, the 1,4-dioxane that was in the water was considered not to be coming from the StarMet site. They felt that the 1,4-dioxane was being bounded before it reached the river. Basically, that they had bounded how far that had gone, and that the models said that it would go in the river, not under the river. And it wasn't until basically the last few months before the record of decision was signed off on by everyone that they actually came up with the concern that it was getting under the river and that it was potentially heading towards the Acton well field. And they are still not saying that it has reached the Acton well field. They are preventing it from getting to the Acton well field. That's how the NMI model goes. Now, I know that as far back as 20 years ago, people from Acton, basically Mary Michaelman from Acton, was showing up at our meetings saying that Grace is complaining that all of the 1,4-dioxane is coming from the NMI site under the river and not from their site. And so that's why I am a little concerned about Grace's interpretation of their PFAS data. So Grace had a meeting where they updated people on what was going on at the site, and they showed some beautiful maps about how they have solved the main chemical of concern, which is this is just the one page, right? This is, yeah. They were showing the so is that, I'm trying to make sure I've got the right pictures here. They basically presented at their meeting. So this is 1,4-dioxane, or this is
That's the PFAS data, Pam.
that's just the PFAS data.
Yeah.
That one. Okay.
You can see there's really no contamination from Grace, from the Grace site that's near Essabet 1 or Essabet 2, which is, if it was coming from the Grace site, you should see a plume heading down in that direction toward Essabet 1, and you don't. There's really nothing around it.
Okay. So you think this is,
What are those gradient numbers for the PFAS? The 128, 130, 132, 134?
I think what those are is topographic contours, Tim.
Yeah, so where are you seeing any PFAS data on this?
you're seeing it in the green?
The greens they're boxing it? Okay. I can hardly read those on mice.
I know it's hard.
I don't see the actual numbers. What?
Yeah, right.
The values
Green,
of it.
Greenman was sampled, yeah.
Sample. Okay.
Okay, and so the data is actually below.
All right.
So the data isn't marked on this map the way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they've marked ones that were larger than 20 with the marker on that
That
graph.
was me,
Right.
actually.
Huh?
Grace didn't do that. That was me. The yellow highlighting is me.
No, well, you're fine.
This was you?
Yeah, I just didn't want.
So could you go down to that table again?
Sure.
Thank you. There. So you
Sorry,
pointed out the
I'm-
ones that are higher. And these are on NMI's site,
That's the Grace site.
northeast. Okay.
This is the
We're
gray
looking
side.
at this
Yeah.
now. It's the Grace site.
Okay, so the only, what, there's a half a dozen that are higher than 20?
And then that's the old
So-
land, looks like the landfill area. And then there's a former blowdown pit that has a concentration of 330 parts per trillion.
Yeah,
Now that's higher than what we see at
Starman.
at NMI, but it's still apparently it's nowhere near the Estabit 1 well.
Mhm.
So,
So,
So-
just let me say that the 330 is not one of the regulated PFASs. So it's not clear to
Oh,
me how to
right.
think about that one.
It's
So it's this
FTA.
other one, 6:2 FTS, and I don't know very much about that, but it's not one of the 6 that Mass DEP regulates. The 6 that Mass DEP regulates are the yellow highlighted line that says sum of MCP method, groundwater standard for PFAS.
so were those two also in the
The NMI,
NMI
data,
data?
yeah, they are, Pam.
Okay,
And if you look at, if you go back to the NMI picture, the black numbered concentrations include all the PFAS data. So it's all together. They don't
This
split
one.
it out. So they had
Yeah, I don't-
80,
Those are the sum totals,
those are some totals of all the PFAS data, correct?
6 of them. Yeah.
okay. So I'll have to say that, so you're saying that it really does look like any PFAS is not coming from either Grace or NMI?
I wonder
be
if there
active.
might be a third source there somewhere.
Kim, is that your view too?
You know, I really couldn't say. I can't see a really clear evidence that the PFAS at the Aspet well is coming from one site or the other site. And I know that the Acton Water District is saying that they also, at least last time I talked to Nat, they were also feeling that the PFAS situation had not been adequately clarified and that additional sampling and modeling was needed to understand the likely source of the PFAS in the Aspet wells.
Do PFAS or 1,4-dioxane affect the other Acton wells that are on the other side of the Gray site?
Yes.
And does it look like they are coming from the Gray site there?
The 1,4-dioxane is thought to be coming from the Grace site, but the PFAS, there's another possible source for the PFAS, is my understanding.
Okay,
So the site with the 44 parts per trillion of PFAS is actually, for what it's worth, it's in Concord, if this is interesting to you. It's just right at the border between Concord and Acton, and just by the landfill. It's that one. It's a little farther up, a little farther up.
this one?
Up, one more up.
Yeah, that
That's
one.
the one with the 44.
Okay, and that's in Concord.
Oh, it's right on the town line. That red line is the town line.
Okay,
It's 44 parts per trillion of the 6
Total, right?
that are within the Mass DEP maximum contaminant level.
okay. So when we're talking about how far deep are they sampling when they're doing this, when they're finding this?
They're finding it in both bedrock and overburden, but there's more, concentrations are higher in overburden.
It's still, we're talking 40 feet deep, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Does PFAS have an air vapor intrusion problem? Or is PFAS just if you're exposed to it in the water?
Yeah, I think if you're just exposed to it in the water, I don't think it's a very volatile compound.
Okay, so there's nothing here that we need to think about as potentially affecting somebody above where these samples partake in.
No, in the breathing zone, no.
Do you have PFAS data from the Concord wells?
Do I have PFAS data from the Concord wells?
Oh, I'm sure we have it, but I don't know where it is. It's the
Was
thousands.
that in the? Did you send that out? Oh, in the Concord
The Concord water supply well.
drinking water wells.
Yeah.
Yes, I do not have that data right off. Should we be getting that data?
Well, all public water suppliers are now required to
Yeah.
collect this starting.
Yeah, but
very
somebody
shortly.
might not think to give it to us. Karen, are you still on the call?
Yeah.
Karen Byrne?
I'm here. Yep.
So do you know if the Board of Health gets water quality data from the town's drinking wells?
They're required to provide us, they're required to provide all town residents with water quality.
Well, again, whether if they have tested for PFAS, if that's
ask,
information that the next time you get it at the Board of Health, could you forward it to the committee?
yeah, I'll
Thanks.
actually, I'll write myself a note to ask for that tomorrow. So we're asking for drinking water well quality testing for PFAS, PFAS.
Yeah.
And just the
Thank you.
report just the report in general. If it doesn't have that, do you want it anyway?
Go ahead and send me the report so I know, but I'm curious whether you've got that data from any time
Okay,
recently.
I'll check.
So Kim, one of the things that's true is that Concord's drinking water wells are nowhere near this site and have been completely isolated and showing no connection with it. So that's one of those things where it's hard to convince people in some cases to be as concerned.
Wave the bloody shirt.
What?
It's
Yeah.
hard to wave the bloody shirt when those water is not being affected at all.
Yeah. So I will have to say that if you kind of randomly, we had lots of maps that showed that 1,4-dioxane was bounded and was not reaching across the river from 2015. And that changed. And I went to a WR Grace meeting where they showed the pictures of the 1,4-dioxane and the PFAS, and they showed arrows that were going in a different direction from the Acton Town well. Their data from their site, not from the NMI site. And this very much reminds me of that period in the history of when we were still thinking that, yes, there might be a problem, but it must be Grace because our models don't show that it could possibly get there. And I am concerned about the model that they use at Grace for how stuff is moving through the groundwater. Am I just being a little nervous here and that those models look good? Or do we even have enough information to know whether they're using a good model of the groundwater movement?
Well, the
For 1,4-dioxane.
the models would be accurate, but again, it depends on what kind of data they're putting in. If they only have limited data, then that's all they're going to get out of a model. A model is only as good as the data you put into it.
Well, but the data don't. In other words, they're showing the same arrows that they would have shown in 2015. Do we think that they have updated with the data and that their information is still good? Kim, do you feel that way?
Well, I was under the impression that they were going to put together with Grace and they were going to put together a uniform model and show how all these things are running together. And so I would suspect that the Maximus would then apply what I think is they're usually good models and data to the GRACE data and show how the two, isn't that what they were doing for the 1,4-dioxane? They were going to show what part was flowing from GRACE, and then they were going to make a overall model with all of that area as a single part piece rather than the GRACE piece and the NMI piece.
They have indeed claimed to have made an integrated model that spans both the area between NMI and WR Grace. It doesn't appear to go north from the WR Grace site, which is also a direction of concern. So I have not seen anything approaching a report on how that model works or what its outcome is, but it is purported to exist. With respect to the data quality, the PFAS data is pretty patchy. You know, PFAS is only emerging as a contaminant of concern pretty recently. And when I asked for the PFAS data, the data that they gave me was from November 2019, which has already gotten to be a pretty long time ago. And there doesn't seem to be anything that you really call a time series with which you could, you know, look and see how it's evolving over time. So the 1,4-dioxane data, the map came with, you know, historical data as well, so you could see how each site was evolving over time, but we don't have that for the PFAS data. So I would say the PFAS situation is still pretty poorly constrained.
Isn't the PFAS data looking like it's following the same groundwater path? You know, I know the uranium moves differently, but do PFAS and 1,4-dioxane move the same way through the water model, through the water table?
I've got a curious idea. That's interesting. I mean, it's clear uranium and 1,4-dioxane are completely different substances. And I don't know what this PFAS data is a whole nother type of molecule completely. So I really have no idea whether it absorbs and desorbs from the soil like uranium does, or whether solubility in water. I wouldn't think the solubility in water is very great in the first place, but we're talking parts per trillion. And one of the reasons I think there's no historical record is because the analytical chemists couldn't measure those kind of type of levels
That's right.
until a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Or a few
The
years.
other thing is that PFAS is not a single chemical. It's a family of related chemicals, of thousands of different kinds of chemicals. So, you know, one would suspect that they behave differently with respect to solubility and
Well, I don't think it's thousands, but there
It is
is
thousands.
a mixture of a number of different.
Except that, you know, organics like tend to behave a lot alike. They are very closely related. You would expect the PFAS chemicals themselves to have the same kinds of, you know,
Right.
solubility, transport kinds of properties.
I mean, everything is going to be traveling with advection, with the groundwater flow, more or less. And these are organics. They're particular classes of chemicals. You know, they're not metals, they're not uranium. So they're going to generally react the same in the groundwater table.
They are lighter than water. Is that correct? I suppose I should know this as the chemist, but
Yeah.
there are big differences in organic chemicals depending on whether their density is.
Well, the chlorinated solvents are heavier than water.
Yeah. So
Fluorine is a lighter molecule. So I'm not sure what the density would be compared to water on that.
I suspect our densities are less than water.
Yeah, you might be right on that.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like we don't have enough data to really judge this right now, right?
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons we're due for a community meeting.
So do you think the integrated data model was going to be part of the community meeting? Kim, did you get that impression from?
I did not get that impression, but it would be a great thing to ask for.
Okay, and would we like some information about comparing solubility and transport of PFAS and 1,4-dioxane so that we have an understanding of that too?
Be a good idea.
Yeah, we could ask for that. That should be readily available from information on the internet, though. We could probably look that up ourselves.
Yeah,
As
I
far
wouldn't
as-
mind
as-
having Bruce talk us through it though, as part
Yeah,
of
yeah.
explaining the model.
Yeah, it would be very valuable to get what they know from the combination of data and modeling about how PFAS is traveling.
Okay.
And I don't really understand about that site with the 214. They said it was a well. Was it a disposal well?
It was a Barcad well, which I'm not really familiar with that type of technology, but it's an older type of well installation technology. And what they supposed is that the well installation materials themselves were causing the high concentration of PFAS at 214 nanograms per liter. So they
So
replaced it
I
with
could see how Teflon would be something that you would put as, these are the kinds of chemicals that would make drilling easier.
Right.
But that is the source, and not that there's some source from all the toxic blend of stuff that's nearby.
right.
It's another
that would-
interesting problem.
Yeah, that would seem to be the case, that it's from the construction of the well itself.
huh,
So
How are the
And-
concentration of these chemicals measured? Do they measure separately thousands of
they measured,
sample, or do they select a few?
they measure several dozen. And there are 6 that are designated by Mass DEP as ones of concern. And they measure those 6 and add them together, and they get something that's sometimes called the Mass 6 or the MCL 6. The 6 were chosen because they had enough toxicology information about them, and because they were pretty widely used. So PFAS with an O and PFOA were the 2 that were in the EPA's guidance, and then Massachusetts added 4 more. So Green Acton had a panel discussion about PFAS last fall, and the video and Q&A are available on the Green Acton website. I can put that in the chat if that's of interest to you.
How is each component measured? Is it a mass spectrometer or a chemical process?
I can't imagine it's wet chemistry at that level. It's
No.
got to be, but I don't know how it is measured.
I'm sure it's something like mass spec
Yeah.
with that kind of sensitivity. There is this paragraph in the memorandum that you included with your agenda, which says that to determine if PFAS results at GZW72 with a 212 parts per trillion for the sum of the 6 NCP PFAS compounds resulted from the presence of the Barcode equipment. The sampling results showed similar uranium and 1,4-dioxane concentrations at Barcade well GZW72 and the new well MWBS72. The EFOA and MWBS72 were substantially lower, 5 parts per trillion for the sum of the 6 MCPs, than in the GZW72, suggesting that the Barcade well construction was the likely reason for the elevated results in November 2019. Both wells will be resampled twice in 2021. That's what I was saying. Assuming consistent results, then GZW-72 will be abandoned. So they really expect that that's not going to be an issue any longer. There will then, does that mean on the site there are not any other levels above 20? There's a 31 there, I see. But is that and there's a 21, 16.9. So, I mean, that's why they think if they were to prove that that is a localized problem, that they don't have to worry about PFAS on NMI anymore.
They would still have to stop that source. If we're saying that the well, its equipment itself is the source,
Yeah.
you would
stop
not need to
using the
just
well.
abandon it. You'd need to remove it, wouldn't you?
Right, I'd stop using the well. I don't know if that means take it out, but that's a question to ask them. You know, if that's the source, how are you going to remediate that source? Are you going to pull the whole well out, or are you just stopping using it may not be good enough?
There's also a concentration of 135 well down gradient of the building itself, the buildings itself, but before you get to the river. So
Where is that?
it is, looks like MWBS 15.
Put the arrow near it.
Where is it? Down gradient of the river?
Yeah, no, it's on the NMI side of the river.
I don't see it.
It's actually not far
Here?
from Valley Sports.
You talking about the 135 here?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Oh, over there. Yeah.
yeah,
136, excuse me. Oh,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty high concentration right there. It's not sure where that came from. It kind of popped out of nowhere there. But
So the question is, do we think the wells are affecting only themselves, or do wells with bad technology are they a source for the other readings elsewhere?
they would only be a source for the wells that you're for the wells that you're dealing with. So like GZ72 would only be a source for GZ72 and nothing down gradient of that. They're pretty localized.
You're sure about that, though,
Yeah,
that's not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those concentrations would be pretty localized. The concentrations that are coming from the wells themselves, it wouldn't affect anything down gradient. I'm sure of that.
Is
So I
there
don't
something?
see this 135 one on the data table.
Is it 35 or
Could you move
130?
it's
WBS 15.
I don't have the data table for this one here.
It's
okay.
the
Let's try it.
I have
Do
the
you have
data
the-
table. BS 15.
Right.
WBS 15 is not showing up as 135. The data table.
It's actually reversed.
Oh, wait a minute. I got it.
BS 115 is the bedrock well. The 135 concentration, it looks like it's in
Oh,
MWS 15.
Yeah,
Which is
I
an
do-
overburden well. So the concentrations are reversed there.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, it's the overburden well that has the 135.
but what's interesting is I had mapped the Massachusetts 6 ones, which is only 17. So that hadn't caught my eye as being a problematic one. But you guys had mapped the total PFAS, which was a wise thing to do, in fact.
Yeah.
And that's where the 135 comes from. And it's this other, it's coming from 2 other PFASs that are not in the Massachusetts 6. So I don't know what to make of those. That's interesting.
So are those the same as in the, no, that's the wrong thing again, sorry. I have a hard time finding are those the same 2 that are mentioned here as the,
No, they are not.
okay.
There's a 49. So the EPA or Grace EPA has kindly put these big numbers in red. So there's a 49, which is perfluoropentanoic acid. So that's one I'm not familiar with. And then there's a 27, which is another one that isn't in the Massachusetts group. So
Okay.
Could you go back to the table again, Pam, please?
What?
Could you go back to the table, please?
To the table.
Well,
This is the table of the Grace site.
yeah, with that one. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank Fine, I'm gonna look at it again.
Does anyone know how accurate these numbers are? A factor of 2 accuracy, maybe? Factor of 10?
They know, but you have to scour the report, they'll tell you. There are actually 7 PFs listed there. Not 6.
Let's see. The ones that are in yellow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah, and
are the Massachusetts 6.
the first one is the perfluorobutane sulfonic acid, and that's not one.
I think that's right, but I wouldn't want to swear to it. These
Yeah.
names are very cryptic.
What is FSP? Field sampling plan. So there's one that's in the field sampling plan that's not in, because he has X's there for the MCP related ones.
Yes, you're right. The ones with the X's are the Massachusetts 6.
Oh, the MCP related.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the other one, so why did they sample for perfluorobutane?
Yes. Because they're,
This is Rick Olson. I have a quick question. Is the Mass DEP drinking water standard at 300 parts per trillion or
20.
20 parts per trillion? Okay. I was reading something that sort of suggested it was higher. Okay.
It was just
So
set
that is equivalent to, let's see, it would be, in terms of micrograms per liter, that would be 0.02
nanogram.
nanograms per liter. Yeah. 20 nanograms per liter. So it's 0.02 microgram per liter.
Correct.
Okay.
And all these
So I
values,
think this is,
all the values being cited are nanogram per liter values. Is that correct?
Right, parts per trillion.
Yeah, nanograms per liter.
Yep.
Thank you.
so I'm gonna say, are we going anywhere with this discussion right now, or do we really need the water model?
We need the water model in another round of PFAS sampling, I think.
Okay,
That sounds
Is there-
really good to me.
excuse me?
I said that sounds really good to me. The integrated
Okay.
water model and more sampling.
So I'm gonna ask that that Bruce get the integrated data model into our discussion, into the technical group discussion when he does that, and to talk about getting us familiar with the difference between PFAS and 1,4-dioxane as far as how it moves through the water. And a discussion of how they think the wells themselves are the problem with PFAS, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think to ask them, how are they going to remediate that source?
So I will do that. I'm thinking it's going to be unless, so how soon do you think this committee needs to discuss this again? Like,
have a
we'll
meeting
probably be
scheduled-
ready for a discussion after a month, right?
Well, we have a meeting scheduled in May, don't we?
In theory, yeah. Does that sound good enough for everybody? Nick?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fred?
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Does
May
the 6:30
4th.
work for people?
Yes.
6:30 actually works pretty well, yeah.
Okay. So I want to point out to the people who aren't so technical here that what we are talking about, when you hear the general public talk about them, they're talking about nanochemicals or nanocontaminants. And these are the kinds of things that are getting people in an uproar about sites like contaminated sites and water supplies everywhere. So when you have someone from the outside saying they're concerned about liability and where it goes, again, 6 years ago, they were still pointing at, NMI was still pointing at Grace as the source of 1,4-dioxane, and nobody had PFAS on their radar at all. And this is something that affects a water supply. So this is something we want to be sure they're getting right and ahead of schedule, not find out they did it wrong and have to clean up afterwards. You know, especially if we literally have PFAS contamination because of the way people put in wells. That's an interesting problem. So I just wanted to point that out to other people. Are we done with the water discussion right now?
Just have one other question for Kim. Kim, what did you say was the latest concentration of PFAS in Aspen 1? Did you say that earlier?
I did, not quite. What I said was the latest concentration in the water coming from the South Acton water treatment plant, which gathers water from the 2 Aspet wells and also the Lawsburg wells. And the concentration in January 20th of this year was 19.7.
19.7. So they actually Acton blends the water from the different sources. They blend it together before they distribute it to the
Yeah.
consumers, right?
Yeah, they've been doing that.
Right.
They started sampling for PFAS about a year ago, and they've been blending effectively for at least, you know, the last several months.
So they don't have an updated concentration just for Aspen 1 then?
I'm sure they do, but it's not published on their website and I don't have it.
Okay.
Hey, Pam,
Yep.
according to the Lincoln water supply, Concord tested negative for PFAS because something revised February 7, 2020, that they indicated
Oh.
the towns neighboring them all were negative. So,
Okay, cool. That's good to know. So, so I want to move on to our next topic. I will get in touch with Bruce. We will plan to discuss it at the May meeting unless there's a whole lot of new data, in which case we'll have an April meeting. How about that?
Okay.
Is that Nick?
Yeah, just back on this for a moment. I hadn't heard it mentioned when we were discussing possible sources. I don't know if a gravel pit is a source, if it's likely, but there was one in operation right behind the shopping center across from the skating rink by the river, right up until about 2010.
Yeah,
There's
I
a lot
got
of heavy equipment there. I don't know if it was used for anything else, like perhaps firefighting training, something, who knows?
I was actually thinking the same thing, that there's a lot of open land back there. If the town of Acton wanted to practice firefighting techniques, that might be a good place to do it. I had thought about that.
So it was questioned and responded at an Acton Water District Commissioners meeting that the water district had been in touch with the town fire department, and they did not have any training exercises using PFAS fire retardants.
Okay, well, I'll still ask about whether that could be a source, whether machinery or something going on there could be a source as well, because that's an interesting. It's a new chemical. There are a lot of things, places. Excuse me?
They used to sell gravel and you have to wash gravel, I think, to,
Wash out the fines.
yeah.
I bought
Yeah,
gravel
yeah.
for my driveway there actually a few times.
Yeah, so did I.
So,
Wonder if there's any PFAS in my driveway.
so I think we're done with this subject, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the next subject on our agenda is to discuss the NMI StarMet Reuse Committee draft report. So the draft report has been out for a while. It's subject to public comments. I'm going to just encourage you all to go to the NSRC website, the town website for that committee, and make comments if you have comments or concerns. At this point, I'm not sure this committee has a lot to do with it. Does anyone else see any needs? Does anybody need a discussion of what's going on with the NSRC report?
let me just say, put in a plug for you, Pam, because I can answer that question. I don't need any more information. Pam gave a fabulous discussion to the League of Women Voters.
Thank you.
What, I don't know, was it Sunday? I guess it was Sunday, Saturday, whenever.
Saturday. Yeah.
She did an excellent job explaining it and answered a lot of the questions, including, as she has already indicated, there's a certain chemophobia arising from nanoparticles. But it's an excellent report. I think they've done a good job.
Okay, did anyone else have?
Matt Johnson and the select board, I just wanted to encourage individual members, if the committee here is not going to be looking at this report as a group, that just because you are concerned citizens, you have some expertise in the field, and these people are looking at, they're proposing different development options for this site, it'd really be great to get your input. So
We have discussed it and passed it on to the committee in the forum originally and as part of the initial writing of the.
Yeah, it's just that as the draft has taken shape, now there is a report to look at. Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody want a quick review of what the report says? Okay, I'm good. Any other public comments?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you people know what a Gambian wall is?
So
I saw that in the report.
Yeah.
it's a Gambian. It's a Gambian wall, not a Gambian wall.
Yeah, Gambian wall.
Gambian wall. So basically,
sometime.
Okay, so what it is it's between the upper parking lot and the lower parking lot area is a wall that is built up of basically rocks and chicken wire and filled in with other stuff.
Yeah, no, I do. So I know.
And it's basically holding. It's at the borderline, I guess, between the cooling pond and the lower bog there, the northeast bog, not the sphagnum bog, but the other side of that.
It's a retaining wall, right?
And it is falling apart, so it can't support weight anymore.
So this is a retaining wall, right, Pam?
It's kind of like a retaining wall, but I think it's built up on both sides, almost like a bridge, a little bit.
I was afraid it was the wall for around the holding basin.
No, it is not. It's not.
I don't know.
And it is not. In other words, they wanted early on to know whether we wanted it restored if we were going to be basically putting more parking back where they're removing an old parking lot that is so old that you can't tell it's paved back on the other side of it. And it's really not going to support like a fire truck or something like that. So I think the answer is no, we're not. But the materials that taking that apart with can be used as fill for other places at the site and spread out in such a way. And that's actually what we're talking about. Is there a place where it's mentioned as a Gambian wall instead of a Gabian wall in the report?
Well, there's some mentions of it when I was looking through some of the comments on the report that they filed, and then we commented on it, and and there was a mention of this, and I'd never even heard of it, so I didn't know what it was, and I thought it'd be easier to ask you people than it would to try and search it out. I Googled it to see what it was, but I didn't know where it was a problem. But now I see it's an existing wall there.
If you toured the site, you actually may well have walked over it.
Yeah, so. That's exactly where it is. Actually.
Excuse me, Pam, Mr. Rick. Maybe for my edification, I haven't seen a lot of the recommendations in the town on the reuse. Could you just briefly explain where the town is, what their position is at this point?
The town doesn't have a position at this point.
They don't. Okay.
The committee is going to recommend that the town look into taking the site, and that so the lawyers get to work on that, and that we start planning how we would redevelop it. And we have a master plan for how we would redevelop it, which would be to concentrate the major redevelopment within the the sort of ring road around the buildings and parking area. And then potentially also to some of the other areas that sort of back up to Thoreau Club, Birch, Black Birch, and Minuteman Arc, that those could be secondary sites for development. And that the Sphagnum Bog and the hillside that backs up back to Thoreau Hills, that whole area be left natural, and the trails on the site be developed that link into the trails that reach the edge of the site right now, and have some environmental education viewing platform kind of thing along the Sphagnum Bog. We're also, really want the liability issues figured out, and our recommendations basically say that it should be environmentally sustainable, that it should have multiple uses at the site, not just for one group, and that we should
I always wondered
be
about,
fiscally responsible about it, so we're not spending money on the site.
I've always wondered, because I live right, my parents live right
Yeah.
behind it, and I walked those trails many times, and I walked the trails because we used to live at Forest Ridge and Riverbend. We've moved to another condo in Carlisle. So I'm very familiar with Thoreau Club, but I wondered about has there much testing of the soil been done where Thoreau camps, the Thoreau Club camps, the summer camps are, being that it's so close to the soils and in the actual site? Has that been really?
So Thoreau Club did their own testing that
did,
is not subject to ours, in anticipation of taking the site when they took it,
Right.
when they bought it and traded it, or however they arranged their purchase of the site and became owners of the site. There is a swath of Concord owned land between Thoreau and NMI that was part of the soil sampling, and I'm pretty sure there's a couple of wells within that boundary. I'm not sure exactly where they are compared to Black Birch and Minuteman Arc and there, but they haven't done the every square inch thing, but there's not a real, it's pretty well bounded.
And it's below the standards.
Oh yes, there's not going to be any excavation or any work needed to be done
I'm
back
asked
there.
that question periodically, and I can't remember what the results were. I had seen the results.
There's no soil removal on any property outside of the
No, I know
STAR
that.
met
I
that's
know
going to
that.
be required. So
Do you have, the other question I have is the soil removal process, where does that stand?
the soil removal process. Okay, so they're doing their remedial design now, and so I don't know when they would actually begin doing the soil removal. So
I think we just.
it's kind of waiting for the remedial design to be
I know
complete.
they're going to do a very good job on it, but the biggest issue is, and you've been very active in this area, is making sure that's done in a way that's very protective of the surrounding, like Black Birch or whatever, because there's some houses pretty close by.
So this is, again, one of the things where when they do the work, they do it with dust monitors.
Right.
Dust monitors don't detect radioactivity, they just detect dust. And you assume that the dust is the worst that you could find at the site. And you literally can have an alarm go off if the wind gets too high. And while, you never know how it might happen in the future, but you have a good clue from how they did the removal of the buildings, and also especially the ductwork, which was very contaminated, that was on the top of the buildings, because that was very subject to dust issues. And they only worked about a third of the time when they were doing that work, because they were very sensitive to, we do not want a dust problem. And we didn't have any complaints from anyone in the community. A lot of the community didn't even know that work was going on when that was going on. So that
the questions come up all the time.
Yeah. But they're very good at being protective just by assuming the worst. And that's new since StarMet left the site. That was not the way it was when StarMet was there.
Absolutely not.
I have a question about the soil removable and filling. The De Maximus summary mentions 1440 Main Street as a viable source of backfill.
Right now, they are going to use 1440 Main Street as their source
Where-
for backfill. So they
there?
will not be looking at the site A2 at all as being a potential space at the site for taking it down to get the extra backfill they need, because they've tested the stuff at 1440 and it's clean. The one caveat is that the 1440 Main Street project doesn't actually have an excavation permit yet to excavate that dirt. So in theory, that could fall through for them, but more than likely they would like to do that. And the advantage of that is that the trees have already been removed at 1440, so they're not responsible for restoring them. Whereas if they took soil from the site where they didn't have to remove it, like in area A2 along the Route 62 there, then if they remove that soil, they would be responsible for restoring the site and making up for the trees that they removed as part of that. So it has the advantage that it reduces the number of trucks on Concord roads going through town, getting rid of things and bringing in things if you're collecting it from right down the street. So
What are they building at 1440?
there's a whole community development back there.
Is that back toward the entrance of Thoreau Hills?
Hmm?
Is that back toward Concord, back toward, what is it, east on 62? Is it back east?
It's east on 62 from the StarMet site
Right,
on the same
right.
side of the road, I think.
Would be on
Opposite
maybe
side of
the
the
other.
road,
on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
isn't it?
and much
There's a
closer
lot of
to
building
West
going on in
Concord
Concord
Village.
right now.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
And it's much closer to West Concord Village than Thoreau Hills.
It's across the railroad tracks, right, from Ride Out.
Oh,
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
more or less. It's right up the hill.
It's a
Yeah.
long ways away. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I know what it is. Yeah.
It's not,
I mean,
It
yeah, in
still
relative
doesn't
terms,
mean
it's
that
still
there
not
are-
far away, but
It's not
it's,
across the street. It's
Yeah.
down, it's down near the right up. Okay.
they also say that they have space to store the dirt on the site so that if it comes out of 1440 and it is a couple of years before they're ready to restore an area on the site, that it can sit there at 2229. So that's not really an issue anymore about using the fill from the site. So. Okay, any other public comments? So I wanted to say hi to Ray. Hi, Ray.
Hello, Pam. I told people I was leaving work early so I could get onto this. But
Cool, thank you so much. So are
still
you at
not
the
s-
Navy Yard in Washington?
well, yeah, actually, I live between the Navy Yard and the Capitol, so therefore,
Ah.
I was actually closer to the roadblocks for the Capitol last month, the initial first roadblocks than the Capitals to those roadblocks. But
Oh my goodness.
so it's
Well, thank
been
you
an
for
interesting
coming.
time, and I haven't been back in Concord since about a year now. So it's hoping my term will be over shortly down here, and I'll get back home.
So are you interested in continuing on the committee once you get back?
At this point, I'm not sure what I'm doing. I think
Okay.
it should be like September. And since you said I still am on the committee, we'll see what happens when I get back. But I appreciate the invite.
Well, technically you had told me that you were away, so that you were not on the committee, right?
But yes,
Okay. That I think the town doesn't seem to think that's the official way to resign from the committee. So technically, if you wanted to vote today, you could.
I don't know enough facts. So I will not vote for anything one way or the other.
Well, thank you again for your service. I really appreciate that. So, that's all. Then I will talk to Bruce about things, and we will reconvene at our May meeting. Is that good for everyone?
Sounds good.
Okay, then we're adjourned. Thank you.
No, Pam, you have to do the adjourn by.
Oh, I have to adjourn with a vote. Okay. So anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I just wanted to step in and just say
Yeah.
that I talked to the town clerk and she says there is actually no legal reason that you have to vote to adjourn this meeting.
Oh.
You can just adjourn.
Okay, we're adjourned.
We're
Okay.
adjourned then.
Bye.
That's
Aye.
new, Matt, then.
Thanks very much. And thanks for sticking with us the whole time, Karen. I
See you
appreciate
later,
the help.
Bob and Tim.
That's
Yeah.
new to
You
me.
too. Good to see you all.
So, thanks.
See you later, Bob.
Stay safe. Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
night.
Take care, Bob. Take care, Tim.
Tim.
Pam, before you hang up,
Yep.
you had mentioned you'll have an April meeting if you need one. Now, remember, we didn't post an April meeting.
Right,
And-
it needs a week in advance, right?
Well, yes, but I will let you know that I'm gonna be gone for at least 2 weeks in April.
Okay.
And I'll try, obviously I'll try to get that done for you beforehand, but if you stick to that date, I could just post it and we could cancel it.
I think not, because if
Okay.
we had it, we would probably have it right after the data became available. So,
Okay.
so I will wait till the data become available and then pick a date if we have an extra need.
And then you'll have
More
that
than likely, then everyone would say, I can't make it, so we'll talk in May.
But you'll have that meeting with the technical meeting, and I won't have, you'll just send me
You don't
that.
have to be a part of the technical meeting at all.
Okay.
And the May meeting, if you could post that, I would appreciate that.
I will, no, it's posted. I'll get the Zoom information for you.
Okay. And
All
then
right.
we don't have an April meeting scheduled right now, right?
It's not on the books. I took it off
Okay.
because we did
Great.
every other month. Okay,
Okay.
terrific.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll see you
Thank
later.
you.
Bye, Len. Bye,
Bye.
Fred.